We'll begin our investigation with Adam. In the past, I covered the likely phenotype of Adam and Eve in early man. My conclusion was that Adam and Eve would have likely been a red-brown skin complexion. This is based on his name and being created from the red dirt.
And the Lord God formed man of the dust of the ground, and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and man became a living soul.
According to Abram Publications, Adamah, red ground, red earth, for a meaning of the name Adamah, Nobse, Study Bible Name List, reads red ground. And according to GotQuestions.org, what is the meaning of the Hebrew word Adamah? The Hebrew word Adamah means land, ground, or soil. The word Adamah could then be more literally translated red ground, and the name Adam could be said to mean red man, or man from the red dirt. And according to Jedi Resource Center, it reads, the word for ground is Adamah, and of course the first man is called Adam. It perfectly fits the scene of God forming Adam from the Adamah, and the fact that Adam's skin is red, Adam, in Hebrew, like the ground. The color red is part of the brown family of colors, which is why I say Adam and Eve and the complexion of early mankind would have had a reddish brown skin tone. Adam probably had a complexion similar to this man. Eve would have probably had a complexion similar to this woman. The descendants of Adam and Eve in the pre-flood world had similar reddish brown complexions that would vary among each other. It seems to be agreed upon by both Christian and secular science that Adam and Eve, or the first man and first woman, would have been dark-skinned.
I hear this one a lot. How can there be so many races in the world if we are all descendants of Adam and Eve? Well, check this out. First off, let's talk about the word race. Sometimes when people use the word, they mean supposed races of people who have evolved at different times, rates, and in different locations. That's not true. Of course, the word race is also a term we use to distinguish between groups with different physical traits, namely skin color. But are there really different races? Take a gander at Acts 17:26, where it is written that God, from one man, made every nation of men. It's clear then that the Bible teaches that there is one race, the human race. The Bible is also clear that all people on the earth are descendants of Adam and Eve who were created by God. Check Genesis 1:26 through 28. Easy enough. God created two people in his image, male and female, and told them to increase in number. So, Adam and Eve are mom and dad of the human race. Then, their children had children, and those children had children, and so on and so forth for many generations until, according to Genesis 6:9, the world's population was reduced to 8 people who were protected inside an ark during a global flood. And those 8 people later walked off the ark, and according to Genesis 9:19, from them came the people who were scattered over the earth. Oh, wait a second. What do I mean scattered? Well, jump over to Genesis 11 and let's talk about an event known as the Tower of Babel. Basically, because of the sinful actions of the descendants of Noah, the Lord confused their language and scattered them from there over all the earth. That's pretty clear and concise. Okay, so we've got lots of people who are descendants of the 8 folks who came off the ark, and now they have been scattered all over the earth. That explains that we are still one race and that different groups of people ended up in different locations. But how do we get a bunch of different colored people if we are all one race? Well, follow along. This, of course, is a simplified explanation, but the basic principles are true. We all have a pigment in our bodies called melanin, which, depending on different variables, produces different shades of the one main skin color we all possess. Several genes control the amount of melanin produced and thus the variability in the skin shade. In fact, it's easy for one couple to produce a wide range of skin shade variability in just one generation, as we'll see in just a moment. Time for a quick genetics lesson. DNA is the molecule of heredity that is passed from parents to children. A child inherits 23 chromosomes from each parent. Each chromosome pair contains hundreds of genes, which regulate the physical development of the child. However, to illustrate basic genetic principles pertaining to the topic, we'll just talk about 2 genes, the genes that control the production of melanin. So, let capital A and capital B symbolize versions of the gene that code for large amounts of melanin, while little a and little b code for small amounts. Got it? Easy. Check this out. Take a look at the upper left. Let's say dad contributes capital A, capital B genes, and mom contributes capital A, capital B genes as well. Together they will produce a child with capital A, capital A, capital B, and capital B. This is a kid with a lot of melanin, and thus he will have very dark skin. Easy to see. Here's the bigger point though. Let's say dad contributes capital A, capital B, and mom contributes little a and little b. Well, the child's skin will be middle brown shade, the combination of capital A, little a, and capital B, little b, which by the way represents a majority of the world's population. Not only that, but if each parent is capital A, little a, capital B, little b, the combinations that could be produced in their children could result in a very wide range of skin shades in just one generation. So, since Adam and Eve were the first people ever, it makes sense to conclude that God placed in them a combination of genes that could produce all different shades of skin we see. Those same combinations would be present in Noah and the 7 other people who boarded the ark. And because God dispersed people at the Tower of Babel, he dispersed the population, thereby isolating gene pools in the different people groups. Over time, different cultures formed in different locations with certain features like skin shade becoming predominant. And here we are today. And since we all go back to Noah and his family, it makes sense that we are all different shades of brown. One race, multiple people groups, just like the Bible teaches. Simplified for sure, but enough said.
I believe that Adam and Eve and early man was dark-skinned. The Christian scientific point of view of Adam and Eve being medium brown is very interesting. Capital A and lower a and capital B and lower b, Adam and Eve would have the genetic code for all colors. Therefore, Adam and Eve and early man would have been medium brown skinned. But what's also interesting about medium brown skin is that it's very similar to the color of reddish brown. Therefore, again, as I stated, Adam and Eve and early man would have been dark-skinned and would have had a reddish medium brown complexion. With that being said, the reason why understanding Adam and Eve's complexion is important to understanding Shem's complexion is because now we can ask this important question. Did Shem maintain this skin tone of a reddish brown complexion? Did Shem lose it, or did he and his earliest descendants remain the same or a similar complexion to Adam and Eve? In order to answer this question of Shem's complexion, let's see what ancient sources from Jewish, Muslim, and Christian writers have to say concerning what Shem and his descendants looked like. According to Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer, chapter 24, it reads, "He especially blessed Shem and his descendants, making them dark but comely, and he gave them the inhabitable earth." According to Rabbi Eliezer, Shem and his descendants were blessed dark and comely. But interestingly, the original translation is actually believed to have said black and comely. According to the book titled Jews and Blacks in the Early Modern World, it reads, Harold Brackman cited the fascinating and revealing emendations made to the color spectrum of Noah's 3 sons that appeared in the first printed editions of the early medieval texts, Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer. Shem originally black and pleasing in early manuscripts. Therefore, it should read like this: Noah brought his sons and his grandsons, and he blessed them with their several settlements, and he gave them as an inheritance all the earth. He blessed Shem and his sons, black but comely, and he gave them the inhabitable earth. Again, Pirkei Rabbi Eliezer. Let's see what other Jewish, Muslim, and Christian writers have to say concerning what Shem and his descendants looked like. The Persian historian Tabari quotes Ibn Abbas as saying, "Born to Noah were Shem, whose descendants' colors are a black complexion with a light brownish undertone and a dark blackish brown." And according to Bar Hebraichus, speaks of Noah dividing the world among his 3 sons, Shem, the land of the Browns. And this is from Bar Hebraichus. Father was a Jewish convert to Christianity, thus the name. The quotation is from J.B. Selgin, the Encyclopedia of Islam, 2nd edition. And according to the history of the messengers and kings, it reads, "The children of Shem settled in the center of the earth, which is between Satmeh and the sea, and between Yemen and Syria. Allah made the prophets from them, revealed the books to them, made them beautiful, gave them a black complexion, luminous and free of blemish." It would seem as though early Jewish, Christian, and Muslim writers believed that Shem and his descendants' skin tone ranged from black to dark brown to medium brown and light brown. Shem would have had descendants ranging in many shades of brown. Therefore, the descendants of Shem could have looked like this: a variety of brown skin tones ranging from light brown to even black. This actually matches great with Adam and Eve and early man, because they likely were dark-skinned, ranging in a medium brown complexion. Therefore, in a sense, Shem could have retained the complexion of Adam and Eve and early man even after the flood. Now, what's also interesting about the description of Shem and his descendants by Jewish, Christian, and Muslim writers is that Shem's skin tone also matches the complexion of Ham and his descendants. Again, according to Rabbi Eleazar, he especially blessed Shem and his sons black but comely, and he gave them the inhabitable earth. He blessed Ham and his sons black like a raven, and he gave them as an inheritance the coast of the sea. And according to the Persian historian Tabri, quotes Ibn Abbas as saying, "Born to Noah were Shem, whose descendants' colors are a black complexion with a light brownish undertone and a dark blackish brown. Ham, whose descendants' colors are true black, and a few are a black complexion with a light brownish undertone." And according to Bar Hebraicus, speaks of Noah dividing the world among his 3 sons, with Ham getting the land of the blacks, Shem the land of the browns. And according to the book The History of the Messengers and Kings, it reads, "The children of Shem settled in the center of the world, which is between Satmeh and the sea, and between Yemen and Syria. Allah made the prophets from them, revealed the books to them, made them beautiful, gave them a black complexion, luminous and free of blemish. The children of Ham settled in the south. Allah gave them a black complexion, and gave some of them a black complexion, luminous and blemish free." According to early Jewish, Christian, and Muslim writers, both Shem and Ham and their descendants would have been similar. They would have shared a similar skin tone, i.e. dark skin, ranging from black to dark brown to medium brown and light brown. According to the book The Jew and Negro, it reads, "Thus, it deduces a further proof that to Shem and Ham was conveyed the burden of jointly producing the black races of the world." I believe it's safe to say that the descendants of Ham would be African populations, more than likely Paleo-African populations like Nilots, Pygmies, Khoisan, etc. Shem and his descendants match skin tones to African populations, or in other words, groups who descend from Ham in Africa. Shem and Ham were similar. Shem and Ham early descendants match. But what's also interesting about Shem and Ham and their descendants looking similar is the fact that ancient Greek writers often talked about Western and Eastern Ethiopians, and that the Middle East or Middle Eastern populations looked Ethiopian, which is basically dark-skinned. According to the book Ethiopia and the Origin of Civilization, it reads, "In ancient times, Ethiopia extended over vast domains in both Africa and Asia. It seems certain declares Sir E. A. Willis Bulge that classical historians and geographers called the whole region, from India to Egypt, both countries inclusive, by the name of Ethiopia, and in coincidence they regarded all the dark-skinned and black peoples who inhabited it as Ethiopians. Mention is made of Eastern and Western Ethiopians, and it is probable that the Easterners were Asiatics and the Westerners Africans. In addition, Bulge notes that Homer and Herodotus call all the peoples of the Sudan, Egypt, Arabia, Palestine, and Western Asia and India Ethiopians. Another classical historian who wrote about the Ethiopians was Strabo, from whom we quote the following. I assert that the ancient Greeks, in the same way as they classed all the northern nations with which they were familiar as Scythians, etc., so I affirm they designated as Ethiopia the whole of the southern countries towards the ocean. Ephorus says that the Ethiopians were considered as occupying all the south coasts of both Asia and Africa, and adds that this is the ancient opinion of the Greeks. And according to the book A History of Ethiopia, Volume 1, it reads, though the country of Ethiopia is frequently mentioned by classical writers Homer, Herodotus, Strabo, Diodorus, Pliny, and others, Homer speaks in the Odyssey of the Ethiopians utmost of mankind, these eastward statute, those towards the west. These extracts only show that Homer thought that there were Eastern and Western Ethiopians. From these various statements, we may conclude that Homer and Herodotus call all the peoples of the Sudan, Egypt, Arabia, Palestine, and Western Asia, and India Ethiopians. Homer invented the names Ethiopia and Ethiopians, as Herodotus, Strabo, and Pliny connect Ethiopia with Egypt. And there is no doubt that the earliest classical writers considered to be Ethiopians all the peoples who were swarthy or brown-skinned or black-skinned, including the Negroes, and the country in which they lived, whether the Sudan or Western Asia or India, to be Ethiopia. What's interesting about these statements from the ancient Greeks is that later anthropologists basically said the same thing. According to the book titled The Ancient Egyptians and the Origin of Civilization by G. Elliott Smith, it reads, the Mediterranean and the East African littorals into the whole peninsula of Arabia and the shores of the Persian Gulf. In other words, Syria, Arabia, Mesopotamia, and Sumer were all parts of the original domain of the brown race. And according to the book titled The Arabs, it reads, the original inhabitants of Arabia, then according to Sir Arthur Keith, one of the greatest living anthropologists who had made a study of Arab skeletal remains, ancient and modern, were not the familiar Arabs of our own time, but a very much darker people. A proto-Negroid belt stretched across the ancient world, from Africa to Malaysia, giving rise to the Hamitic peoples of Africa, to the Dravidian peoples of India, and to the intermediate dark people inhabiting the Arabian Peninsula. With all that being said, I think it's interesting that we have accounts that Shem and Ham look similar. Shem would have settled in Asia and Ham in Africa. Then we have Greeks talking about Western and Eastern Ethiopians, Asia and Africa. And lastly, we have anthropologists talking about a stretch of dark-skinned peoples or Negroid peoples from Africa all the way to India. Perhaps Shem's descendants are these ancient Eastern Ethiopians that the Greeks spoke of, and perhaps Shem's descendants are part of this belt of dark-skinned peoples that would stretch from Africa to Asia. What's also interesting about this term Ethiopia is that it can also mean burnt face, Ethiopian, Negro, but also it can mean red brown. Ethiopians are characterized by very dark skin with a reddish tint, tight curly hair, narrow high nose, a tall slender stature, and long heads and faces, marked chin, thick lips. Besides affinities to other sub-Saharan Africans, they are linked to early Caucasoids who partially left and migrated back to Africa. That was from humanphenotypes.net, Ethiopid. So this reddish-brown connection is very interesting with Ethiopids, and furthermore, we're basically dealing with various colors of brown, and Ethiopians have a variety of facial morphologies. But another interesting aspect about the similarities between Shem and Ham and the testimony of Western and Eastern Ethiopians by the Greeks, and the mention of a dark belt of mankind stretching from Africa to India by anthropologists, and the mention of Shem's descendants being dark-skinned, ranging from black to light brown, basically various brown shades of color, according to early Jewish, Christian, and Muslim writers. Putting all of this together is interesting is because according to UV radiation indigenous skin tone maps of the world, indigenous populations in the Middle East would have actually been dark-skinned, ranging in various different shades of brown that matches populations even in Africa. According to infographic 20.4, human skin color correlates with UV light intensity. Predicted pigmentation skin color predictions based on UVB intensity. The source is from Geographic Distribution of Environmental Factors Influencing Human Skin Coloration. But basically, if you look at UV maps, you'll see that where it is in the hottest parts of the world is basically where the darkest skinned people are, closer to the equator. So this would be people in Africa and people in the Middle East, India, Australia, and South America. Again, this is the globe map of indigenous skin colors. And as you can see, Africa and the Middle East would share similar shades of brown skin tones. So we can confirm that Shem and his descendants likely were dark-skinned, ranging from light brown to black based on indigenous skin tone maps of the Middle East. Even to this day, if you look at the Fitzpatrick scale, most Middle Eastern populations fall in the category scale 3, 4, and 5, which are all dark-skinned and various shades of brown. Type 4. Brown skin rarely burns with sun exposure. Common in people of Mediterranean descent. Type 5. Dark brown skin very rarely burns with sun exposure. Common in people of Middle Eastern descent. Then type 6. Black skin never burns with sun exposure. Types 4, 5, and 6 fit in both Africa and the Middle East. These are again various shades of brown, which matches perfectly up with what we read earlier about both Shem and Ham having skin tones that range from light brown to medium brown to dark brown and black. I believe we can safely assume that Shem and his descendants would have been dark-skinned. Just like Adam and Eve were reddish brown in complexion, Shem carried this same skin tone. Furthermore, both Shem descendants and his brother Ham descendants were similar in skin tone, i.e. black, dark brown, medium brown, and light brown. We also have accounts by Greeks of Ethiopians or reddish brown people in the Middle East, as well as anthropologists who spoke of a brown race or Negroid race of people stretching from Africa all the way to India. And lastly, we see that according to skin tone maps of the ancient Middle East indigenous populations, and based on UV radiation maps, that these populations would have indeed been dark-skinned. Like I said, I believe we can safely assume that Shem and his descendants were dark-skinned early in history. But let's go deeper than this and take a more scientific approach to things. For what I'm about to illustrate to you can apply to a secular and biblical model for the origin of Semites. In terms of the biblical model, this would fit an old Earth that has to go back at least 100,000 years ago, give or take. With that being said, let's begin. First of all, when it comes to secular science, they also state that a scientific Adam and Eve would have been dark-skinned, similar to how Christians say the same thing.
Jefferson may look European, but his Y chromosome tells a different story. It shows that what we look like may not really tell us where we come from. And it raises a question mark over the traditional image of Adam. For centuries, artists have depicted him like this, like a European. For many of us, this is Adam, Michelangelo's famous painting in the Vatican Sistine Chapel. He looks like a beautiful Italian who spends a lot of time in the gym. Did the common ancestor of all men really look like this? The story of Jefferson suggests he could have looked very different. Finally, Wells comes face to face with the man he's been searching for. A new portrait of the common ancestor of every man today. Adam. Without a skull, we can't know for sure what Adam looked like. But a combination of genetic evidence, Bender's forensic skills, and cutting-edge computer software suggest he looked something like this. Thousands of years after the Bible, and hundreds of years after Michelangelo, we have a whole new face for Adam.
I like the expression. He's got a very forceful look.
He's intent on something, maybe taking over the world. You begin to get perhaps an insight into why these guys won out and why this guy's our ancestor.
With that being said, if Adam and Eve and early humans are dark-skinned, we can ask the same question as last time. Did the early descendants of Shem remain dark-skinned like Adam and Eve and early man, or did their skin tone change?